Hey, what's up, YouTube? So one of the biggest issues facing the Oklahoma City Thunder after paying Paul George his maximum extension to the tune of 4 years, $137 million, was the fact that the Thunder were facing an enormous, absolutely horrendous luxury tax bill to the tune of $300 million for next season. So basically, because of the fact that the Thunder have repeatedly gone above the luxury tax threshold in terms of player salaries, they're going to be paying a huge luxury tax to the NBA because of the fact that there's just so much salary on this team that they're paying right now. And it just wouldn't make a lot of sense, I think, with this team and the way that they're at in terms of the state of where they are in terms of competing for a championship, to pay that type of salary at this point in their state of contention. It just wouldn't make a lot of sense there. So obviously, I think the most logical move, and what was actually the most logical move, was to find a way to get rid of Carmelo Anthony's contract, because when you look at Carmelo Anthony, he's a guy who's getting paid $28 million next season. For a guy that's at the backside of his career, he's really not a great player anymore. He's definitely not worth $28 million salary that he's going to get paid. And he's a guy that just did not fit in terms of the basketball aspect of the core with Russell Westbrook and Paul George there in Oklahoma City. It just wasn't a great fit, and you saw that last season where there were just a lot of up and downs because Paul George, Russell Westbrook, and Carmelo Anthony, they just weren't able to figure it out. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Carmelo Anthony is just not the same player that he is. It's just simply fact that he's just not the same player that he was in New York and Denver. So they had to find a way to kind of get rid of that contract and kind of alleviate themselves from that financial problem that they had. So they had two options really. It was either buy him out and try and really stretch that contract over the next couple of seasons, maybe, to where you're kind of you're saving money in the temporary, but you have some problems in the future because you're going to have to pay Carmelo Anthony's salary stretch over the next couple of seasons. I'm not sure the Thunder would have wanted to do that necessarily. The second option was to try and trade Carmelo Anthony to a team with cap space, along with a first-round pick or a future draft pick, basically a draft asset to kind of entice the team to kind of take on his contract, and then basically just trying to alleviate as much of that contract as possible. They ended up going with the second option, trading Carmelo Anthony along with the future protected first-round pick to the Atlanta Hawks in exchange for Dennis Schroeder and Mike Muscala. Now, obviously, I think this trade is an absolute home run for the Thunder because not only are they saving themselves a lot of money by getting rid of Carmelo Anthony's ridiculously high contract, but they're getting a really nice player in Dennis Schroeder and a guy that fills an absolute huge need, I think, for this team, because when you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder over the past couple of seasons, obviously, the biggest problem with this team, even going back to the Kevin Durant days when he was still there, was the fact that they just did not get enough scoring production from their bench. They just haven't had a guy since they traded away James Harden that can come off the bench and really get buckets for your team, to really take a lot of pressure off of Russell Westbrook. And even when Kevin Durant was there, now going on to Paul George, take a lot of pressure off of the star players on this team, so that way they don't have to rely on them having super heroic efforts night in and night out in order to win games for you. That was just a huge problem for the Thunder, where they just have not gotten enough scoring off of the bench for them. And especially with Russell Westbrook as your point guard and doing everything that he's done for this team over the past couple of seasons, you need somebody there that can take on the ball handling duties at the backup point guard position and really make sure that when Russell Westbrook goes to the bench, you have somebody that can step in, run the offense, as well as be a threat to score the ball. And that's exactly what Dennis Schroeder does for this Oklahoma City Thunder team. He's a guy that's very fast and explosive in the fast break game. He adds a lot to that in that element to the Thunder next season. He's a guy that can score the ball. He can make plays for others. He's undersized, and he's a bit of a problem on defense, where he's just not a really good defensive player. But you're going to have to take that negative, I think, because as a sixth man, I think he's absolutely perfect for the Thunder going forward. He's got a very nice skill set for this team, and he really fits the backup point guard role to a T, I think, for this team going into the future. So I think that's a very good deal for the Thunder to get rid of Carmelo Anthony, a guy that just did not fit this team overall. He was getting paid way too much money. They're saving a lot of money by trading in essentially Carmelo Anthony contract for Dennis Schroeder's contract. And by extension, you're filling a huge need for your team and really helping your guys out going into next season. Now, I don't think the Thunder are necessarily anywhere near a contending team in the Western Conference. Obviously, the Warriors and Rockets are still light years ahead of them in terms of overall talent. But this is a team that took a nice step going forward into the future, to where their team looks a lot more balanced and a lot better and respectively going into the future. I really like what they did with this trade here. They're setting themselves up to be a much better team going into the future. So a really nice trade for the Thunder. In terms of the Atlanta Hawks, this trade made a lot of sense, I think. Now, obviously, they're going to be buying out Carmelo Anthony's contract, so he is not going to be playing for the Atlanta Hawks next season. He's getting bought out. He will go to sign with whatever team he wants to sign with. But for the Atlanta Hawks, this trade made a lot of sense because they had a lot of cap space. And it was pretty clear that with this team rebuilding, in terms of their timeline, that they were not going to go out there and spend a lot of big money on a guy, on a big long-term deal. It just wouldn't make a lot of sense for the Atlanta Hawks at this stage in their rebuilding process to do that. So what other ways can you use that cap space? Well, they decided to take on a guy in Carmelo Anthony's contract where they can buy him out, stretch that maybe over the next couple of seasons, potentially, where they're going to have a lot of cap space going forward in the next couple of years while they continue to rebuild. And now what you have here is you're getting potentially a future first-round draft pick from the situation here. It's going to be a late draft pick potentially, which, kind of stinks in that aspect of it. But still, it's a future draft asset that you can use down the line in the future, either as trade bait or, you never know. That could be a nice steal for you if you do your scouting well and you draft well with that draft pick. So that it makes a lot of sense there. And the one aspect that it really makes sense is Dennis Schroeder is pretty clear that when they drafted Trae Young and then decided to trade for Jeremy Lin with the Brooklyn Nets, that Dennis Schroeder was just not a big part of their long-term plans. And when he's getting paid a lot of money over the next couple of seasons on his contract, it made a lot of sense to, one, get rid of that contract so you're not paying it over the long haul in your rebuilding process. But two, you want to give as much playing time to Trae Young as possible and let him grow at the point guard position. It just wouldn't make sense to take away a lot of playing time from him for a guy that's just not a part of your long-term plans. So getting rid of Dennis Schroeder's contract, getting rid of a lot of space for Trae Young on the depth chart, it just made a lot of sense for the Atlanta Hawks. And the fact that you're getting a future potential draft asset in the process made a lot of sense, I think. It was a pretty nice deal for both sides, and I think it worked out for both teams overall. Now, the last thing I want to talk about for this video is about Carmelo Anthony because he's getting waived and bought out of his contract from the Atlanta Hawks once this trade does get finalized. So what's really interesting is it sounds like Carmelo Anthony is going to go to the Houston Rockets to team up with his good pal Chris Paul and James Harden and try and build a super team over there to try and contend with the Golden State Warriors for next season. And while Daryl Morey, the general manager for the Rockets, has been trying to get Carmelo Anthony for a very long time over the past couple of seasons, buyer beware here for Daryl Morey and the Rockets as a whole, because even though I love Daryl Morey, he's one of the best GMs in the business right now. He's one of the best forward-thinking minds at the front office level in the NBA. I really like what he's done with his team overall in his tenure as their GM. Man, I'm not really sure this really fits with their roster because it sounds like Carmelo Anthony would be playing the small forward position in this context if he does sign with the Houston Rockets. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me because at this stage of his career, Carmelo Anthony, he fits more as a stretch four, I feel like. And basically what you're bringing him in to do is basically to replace a guy like Trevor Ariza, who's the prototypical 3-and-D type of player that fit pretty much seamlessly alongside Chris Paul and James Harden. And now you're bringing in a guy like Carmelo Anthony, who's a guy that doesn't play much defense at all, especially at this stage of his career. He doesn't rebound. And he's a guy that needs the ball in his hands in order to be effective, and he doesn't really make other players better. The reason why Chris Paul and James Harden were able to work out their situation last season in terms of the fact that they had to work out who's going to shoot the ball at this possession, were they going to trade turns every single possession. They were able to figure out a nice balance of who got to control the ball every single possession for their team last season. It really worked out for them last year in terms of who got to share the load between Chris Paul and James Harden. Well, now you bring Carmelo Anthony to the mix, and what differentiates Chris Paul and James Harden from Carmelo Anthony is James Harden and Chris Paul, not only are they great scorers that can create offense for themselves, but they create offense and make life a lot easier for everyone else on the offensive side of the ball for their teammates. They make their teammates better because of their passing ability. Carmelo Anthony does not do that. He's a black hole offensively. He needs to basically be an iso ball scorer, a mid-range type of scorer, and work on his game in the high post and basically do that type of style of basketball. It's kind of being phased out of the game at this point in the NBA. So he doesn't really fit in terms of that aspect of the Rockets game. And then when you look at Carmelo Anthony, he's a guy that's really declining, I feel like, when you look at his overall skill set. He's not the same player that he once was a few years ago with the New York Knicks and the Denver Nuggets especially. He's just not that same type of player. You're not getting a prime Carmelo Anthony. You're getting an old, washed-up Carmelo Anthony, and I'm not sure that really improves the Rockets whatsoever. And in fact, that might hamper their upside in terms of where their ceiling is, in terms of competing with the Golden State Warriors. He just doesn't feel a big need. He doesn't play any defense. And I think it would make a lot of sense if he was coming in to play a six-man type of role where he comes off the bench for 5-minute stretches, gets his buckets in, and then goes to sit on the bench after he gets some buckets here and there for you as a six-man type of guy. But the fact that he's going to be coming in as a starter, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for me in terms of that aspect of it. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who do you think won this deal between the Thunder and the Hawks? Do you think Carmelo Anthony will work well with the Houston Rockets? Let me know in the comment section below. Please leave a like and subscribe for more videos such as this. And thanks, guys, for watching.